Welcome, everybody, here to KC Happy Hour number 75. We are three-quarters of the way over to 100. Took last week off 2 weeks ago. A couple people could see I was coughing a little bit under the weather. It's been a busy few weeks for us on this side, busy few weeks for karting across both sides of the country. We just wrapped up, of course, the Rotax Winter Trophy. That was a back-to-back 2-week championship that we dropped kind of last second on our last time on the air, that we were going to be streaming it, and that was on about 48 hours notice. Put that together, got that live. At the same time, last weekend, the Challenge of the Americas get underway over on the West Coast, and the West Coast swing begins. So, a lot to unpack over the last few weeks here, and we've got a couple guests coming on later on in tonight's show. We have Carlos Iaconelli, who is one of the main heads behind managing and running the Piquet Race Park. Alongside his duties as the owner of the Piquet Sports North America race team. So he's been crucially involved in that whole process of bringing that track up to race readiness, getting through their first race weekend. We didn't have a show last week, so we didn't really have a whole lot to debrief about that. So we'll kind of lump that into this week's show. There's the OKN. There's, of course, the aftermath of the way things went down in Orlando for Rotax. And then we got to get ready because we keep on racing this week all the way through the SKUSA Winter Series. So joining me in the studio here tonight for our regular kind of monthly panel that we'll put together here. TJ Koyen will hopefully join us a little bit later on. Matt Johnson joins the show here tonight. So Matt, will bring you on in. Glad to have you back once again here, brother. And you were over in Tucson, am I right, over with the Nash guys and getting everything ready for COTA to roll through the first weekend of the year?
Yeah. I was there. It was all good. We had some guys that obviously ran really well. Jesus and Blake did really well. Peyton showed a lot of good pace. We were top three in almost every session. She qualified third and fourth on Saturday and Sunday. She got as high as third in the final before getting shuffled back a bit, so that was cool. Been fun to watch the progress there. So, yeah, it's been good. Lydia Small had a really good run. Her brother Jax actually did really well for himself, had some moments of brilliance. So, Luca Popescu also had a really good run. Really across the board, there were mostly we were all pretty good in terms of being happy campers. Some results were a little short on what we expected, but that's racing, and we'll just keep on going.
Yeah, we'll get into it a little bit more here. We'll bring ahead on a partner in crime from behind the scenes as well as on top of the happy hour show here, Aaron Hackmeister. So Aaron was with me for the last couple of weeks. He'll be down here for the SKUSA Winter Series as well. But Matt, I wanted to go to you a little bit about, the COTA weekend. Obviously, you guys had things figured out enough to sweep the initial OKN class. So, how much testing did you guys get with the engines? We know everybody was on TM by the end of the weekend. I think one guy was on a Modena. Still waiting for the Vortex and the Miami stuff to get to the States. But, first thoughts from your end, seeing direct drive come back, seeing, I think, honestly, 9 entries to start on all things considered is pretty successful.
Yeah, I mean, it was, to be fair, I heard there were going to be 10, but you know how that is. Sometimes the numbers get a little inflated just to help generate the hype. And the fact that we had 9 entries, I thought was pretty okay. No pun intended for the OKN class. The testing side of it, we were probably the only one that, well, no, we were the only one there. Blake was the weekend prior that had the ability to do some on-track testing. And they were able to play with some things to try and find the sweet spot. I think what they found out was on Saturday, they just put a little bit too much time on the engine. Obviously, these things probably don't quite get the life that maybe the X30 does, for example, but it's still a really good package. And once they got that sorted out for Sunday, obviously they improved on the result. I think the fact that you only had so much availability in terms of having to be able to get the engines is obviously what provided for the entry count. I know Jesus posted today that he's got one more rental package available for whoever wants to come and run in Phoenix. So I'm sure we'll get however many more we can based on, availability and everybody else's schedule and what they can and can't do.
See, and obviously, right, 10 can turn to 9 and 9 can turn to 10 or turn to 15 when we get over to Phoenix. To me, I think that, we haven't seen, in my eyes, out the closest comparison maybe being the SKUSA transition of the pro shifter class going away from the 175 into the KZ, where there's been in the last maybe decade and a half of like a new package coming in without like a crazy, incentive program to kind of kick it off, right? Like when Rock came in different regions, there was engines or entries kind of given out to kind of kickstart the class. When the KA came out, there was a bunch of initial programs where, USPKS in 2017, 4 race entry fees got you a free motor that you got to keep at the end of the season for the first 20. So, stuff
Right.
like that where it's like a single manufacturer putting behind it. Of course, they're going to want to hook people on the product, but I think just as impressive. We're used to seeing classes kind of start out and like explode, whether it was the mini Swifts for the Pro Tour that eventually led to the mini micro split to Rock to X30, and granted X30 even was still kind of a hybrid era with the Leopard. But this is like brand new with, guys are going to it just for the sake of going to it. It's not like we're seeing, here, enter for all 3 challenge races and Andy's going to buy you an OKN engine, right? Like this isn't, that was all guys fully choosing to do it for the sake of running the motor, not just because it was a cheap rate of race or a cheap way to get the engine and then you could sell it at the end of the season. So to me, I think that's pretty cool. But yeah, longevity is one thing that's always up in the air with them. I mean, the one thing that is known is that there's builders that have been working on the OK stuff overseas, and from where talking with the FIA guys, they felt pretty confident that the performance had been maybe not peaked is the right word, but mature. It's not like it's something new. We come out and we started with the Ks in 2017. We didn't rev them past 15,000. We just never, the power curve didn't look like it'd be good. And we go to Supernats last year, we rev them to 17.5 down the long straightaway to turn 1. So I think that's pretty, you know, different to see or interesting to see like whether or not we'll have a lot of progression with those. I'm sure we will as the American builders get better at them, but I was impressed by it. I thought that the Stars guys starting in 3 months when availability would already be out there for every motor to have 10 to start would be really impressive. So to have 9 at the first race with only a couple engine manufacturers in the States, I think is pretty good. Granted, it's the first, so the first is always exciting, but still, like that was like a grassroots, for lack of a better word, kind of making the class go.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I thought it was great to, like I said, to get 10 based on the circumstances. I think it was awesome. Um, as far as the engine in itself goes and the development and the involvement over time, we'll just have to see what that brings. Obviously, the rules are pretty open. I think there's, for the most part, an exhaust port rule and a CC rule. I'm sure there's bore and stroke and stuff like that, but there's going to be some creativity for sure. But at the same time, I mean, when you take those things apart and you look inside, I mean, the parts are very well thought out. I don't know that you're going to see a whole lot of stuff going on there in terms of custom parts or anything like that, because like I said, the stuff's pretty bitchin' to begin with. But also, one cool thing about the class is the fact that it's got the rev limiter. So the rev limiter kind of limits your your combination, so to speak, and the variables within it, because obviously, once you can't over rev the thing like you can a KA or a VLR, for example. So I think that will kind of squeeze things down a bit. And then obviously that also enhances the longevity of the engine in itself. So I don't know. I think it's going to be exciting to see what the class does. It'll be interesting to see, if there are guys that somewhat maybe migrate from the X30 to that, but that's a whole nother thing that's going to be way down the road. Whether or not like SKUSA will implement an IAME only direct drive class, I'm not sure, and that's kind of getting the cart in front of the horse. And I'll stop there.
Yeah, I mean that's a good way to put it, because it could, there's a lot of unknown of where it goes, right, stateside here, and what that looks like. I mean, even I don't know how much in the game plan it was for the IAME guys to bring them in. Every other engine manufacturers like, oh yeah, we don't have any 125 market share at all. Modena, TM, they're going to be the first ones to get stuff out there. Obviously
Sure.
Rock, the GP stuff hasn't been big, and the only place the X30 isn't big is on the regional scene out way west. Everywhere else is still pretty solid. So yeah, there's a lot that we don't know yet, and I don't know. I like to think that we were at the track every weekend, just like yourself. And, you talk to a lot of people and you can kind of get a pulse of which way a series is going, which way a class is going. Just you talk to enough different drivers, team owners, just general families of where they think, and you can kind of predict it. But I have no idea, where it goes from here. There's hype behind it, but that's just because it's unknown. It's once it hits the racetrack, then we kind of see. And we haven't seen that in my lifetime, real, or in my karting lifetime, really, going back of a new class without the current kind of standing guard having major issues.
Sure.
There's X30 took over right at the time Rotax imploded. It wasn't like it brought in and we saw more of a longer dogfight between market share stuff, and it's just different. So it's interesting. But and the motors are super quiet because you got the silencer on. That was one thing I didn't even think to mention, but a couple people commented about, right? Like you hear those on the racetrack and then you go hear the swarm of 40 KAs. Was that noticeable out at Tucson? Obviously the field's smaller.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, field smaller or not, when the thing came by where I stood, which was at the end of the back straightaway there, where that corner is, that hairpin, it was like I could almost barely tell if the thing was running. It was so quiet. And then, of course, with all the rules being wide open, I'm like, hey, man, do we have to run that silencer? Like, what's the deal? But come to find out you do. And that's all good. They're definitely quiet. But whatever, it's the same for everybody. And again, the Rotax is pretty quiet too. It came with a silencer. It still does, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of is what it is. I think it's something everybody will get used to. And I do believe that obviously as there's more of them buzzing around the track, obviously the noise will enhance. And it's cool. I think, to be honest, I think it's its own thing. And I think it needs to stay that way. I mean, there's a lot of talk and there's a lot of ideas behind the class. And I don't want to get too carried away, as I sometimes can with this whole OKN thing or just anything in general. But, I think it needs to kind of almost be like a premier class. I don't think that anybody should just be able to jump in and run it. I think maybe something along the lines of maybe having to get a couple of Pro Tour wins under your belt, or maybe there's only so many per team that can run the category. I mean, there's so many ideas I've already heard to make it somewhat like I guess a Formula One type of situation, but in terms of the team deal. But neither here nor there. I think it's going to be a great class. I think, again, it's just too early to know what the future holds for it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a cool out of the box idea to kind of limit it a little bit because, for kids now, when, unless you already had a car trajectory in mind and the budget's there, like you get to 15, 14 years old even, and you're able to run, the biggest races in the most premier classes in our sport. So, having a goal post a little bit further down the line for anyone to reach, I think is pretty cool. And it just adds a little more, like talking to some parents that, had really good runs with their kids in X30, even in KA, if they didn't have interest to go to X30, right? It's like they feel like they've already conquered the mountain at their first or second year in senior. And there's obviously more to do, but, I was thinking about this a little bit last week that, if there is, another level up to get to, that's why the World Finals tickets work so well. If there's another level up, it kind of keeps that interest of, well, I've got more left to accomplish. So if you can't get right into it off the bat, obviously that would take time to develop, a full ladder and then kind of implement down the line, but it'd be cool. So interesting to hear it, and I'm sure it's something we'll keep talking about. And then on our end on the East Coast, Aaron and I'm sure you had some thoughts on this as well, but we had some drama go down a little bit with the way things ended at the Rotax Winter Trophy. So for everyone watching, here, if you watch some of the streams, that race, again, it wasn't not on my radar. It just wasn't a big one that I knew that we needed to get to. And we had been talking with the RTX guys a little bit about getting out to stream with them even last year. Budget wasn't there. Budget really wasn't there to begin with. And then BRP kind of backed it as they want to have some more of a presence here around the States. Again, another class that's trying to get market share when the country is pretty well served. So they're in an uphill battle no matter what. But they have the World Finals tickets. People like to go to the Rotax World Finals. It's one of the cooler international races out there. And, we had posts, especially more on our Instagram than on our Facebook, that kind of showed how it really just kind of exploded by the time we got to the Sunday mains, when you have that stuff on the line and you have a field where you have some guys that it was cool to show a spotlight on that don't normally get to run up front because the field was smaller and less depth. We're used to Barrichello, we're used to Noel Leon. Aiden Fox hasn't gotten nearly enough love on our streams, and he's been a consistent runner in USPKS and stuff like that, and he got a win. But for everyone watching, I know in the past we brought a lot of guys on, both Barrichello and Leon. That was their kind of last kart race for a little while, so I'm going to give them kind of some breathing room, and I'm sure they'd appreciate it as they get ready for their Formula Car stuff on the year. But the way things went down, we've got now pretty much 2 big weekends we've seen some rivalries come out of. And this one, unfortunately, won't get to fall through the year compared to Marin and AJ at the end of the Rock weekend. But Leon and Barrichello's teammate, Tim Pernod, had got into it the week before. And Leon was passing him in the first hairpin at Piquet, was trying to close him off at the end of the corner. Pernod was still there. He drove over him. They both wrecked in a heat race. So there was already kind of, some rougher racing there that you could go back on. But really, the way the wreck happened, Leon enters the final race 22.5 points to the good. There's 60 points in total for the main event, so he just needed to finish 8th or better to clinch it. The pack starts battling. He gets passed into that left-hand kink and then 180 at Orlando right in front of the grid by Barrichello for the lead, and Pernod tried to go with him and then almost tried to back out, and then it looked like, and it's not a good angle from our camera, but you can see there's a little bit of contact as Fox and then the whole train of like 5 accordion and just kind of sent him on top of him. And so then from De Leon's point of view, he's like, well, I'm racing a red go-kart, and then a red go-kart drives over me, destroys my radiator, destroys my race, knocked the hose off. So he was done at that point. He tried to survive for another lap or two, frustrated, kept going, ended up pulling in and losing the World Finals ticket. So everyone that was watching that online, if you look at it a little bit closer on the way the wreck happened, it definitely wasn't team hoarders by any way, but it's one of those things where it looks like it was because it's one guy on the same team as the guy that was fighting for the championship, and he felt outnumbered, so he felt like he got wronged. But realistically, it was an awkward racing deal where the pack just packs up and guys go over each other. And credit to Joe Turney and Norberg and Morgado because they had kind of an awkward pack on top of each other in the Winter Series, granted with less on the line just to race, and they were already outside the top 5, but similar deal in my eyes. I don't know what you saw, Aaron, but that to me is how you break it down.
Yeah, it was interesting to see. Like you said, like Noel Leon was getting past, and then he didn't really fully run out all the way on the exit of the corner, and that kind of threw off Pernod a bit, I think, because he was looking to kind of get a crossover, and then the space that he was anticipating to open up never opened up, so he ends up going up and over Leon right there, and then Leon has some damage. He's falls back to, I want to say like 5th or 6th at that point, and everybody, like, that wreck happens and everybody just freaks out and they're going like, oh, well, something's gonna happen now, so I got to get going immediately, and everybody's trying to swarm everybody else now, and it just kind of, like, as it built up, there were some other incidents over the course of the weekend that kind of, like, you could tell that something was building, but I don't think anybody realized how dramatic it was actually going to be between all of the players in that race right there.
I've always thought, Matt, and I'm curious what you think. I feel like if we have like a pre-final or a heat race where it was like, damn, that was good, but that was like on the limit of too aggressive, then the main event, you just kind of go in knowing that we're already peaked out with less on the line, and the main event ends up being messy. And then normally if a heat's messy, it kind of freaks everybody out, and the main event cleans up. Like, I've seen it so many times, I feel like, over the last year and a half of streaming these races and then announcing them, that if we have a really chaotic heat race, then we normally get a not so chaotic main. If it's strung out, it's strung out. But if you get a heat race, it's like, damn, that was awesome. Unless the leader breaks away, the main event is going to be like turned up a notch higher, and you can't turn it up higher without somebody wrecking, and then we wreck. I mean, that's what it looked like to me, and that's kind of what happened there because the heat was really good, and then the main event was too much.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, it's just for whatever reason, if the heat race goes great, the main event gets obviously turned up a notch, and they realize they got to, get that much further to the limit, if not, beyond, and there you have it. We have wrecks.
We had the opposite happen in PK, where on Saturday the first heats were all like really rough actually, and I was a bit surprised by it. And then they all cleaned themselves up for the second heats and through the rest.
That's what I mean. Like, as soon as we go over the limit, it's just when we go over the limit. But we know everything gets dialed up. But if you go over the limit, I feel like in the heat races, everyone's already kind of got the wrecking out of their system. It's almost like the big one at Talladega for NASCAR. Like, we know there's going to be one bad session in a full class with enough talent that everyone's going to be on top of each other speed wise. It's just kind of when. And when you get through a whole weekend of like, man, nothing was really dirty and it wasn't a strung out weekend, like there wasn't one bad session, you almost kind of get surprised for my eyes. But that's also from seeing a lot of it over the year and trying to pick up trends, and I think they're more coincidences than trends, but it could be either way. So interesting. But
I think
yeah.
some of it depends on the track too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Some tracks will provide situations where the pass is a bit more risky and therefore you have more wrecks. So I think that's a big part of it, in my opinion.
Yeah, Orlando was.
Place, I haven't been there. Obviously, we're getting ready to head there soon, next week. But it looks busy. I mean, there's a lot going on there. I hear it's pretty gnarly, so I'm excited to see what it's about.
Well, we're going to get to hear a whole lot more from it from one of the guys that is right behind the entire show here right after this commercial break. So Carlos Iaconelli from PK Sports and Piquet Race Park will join us right after this. We got a few questions for him. I got a few myself. So we'll be right back here after this quick commercial break. Kart Store USA is a kart parts supplier that racers and retailers can count on when they need reliable advice and service. We focus on servicing all racers with honesty and pride while maintaining customer satisfaction. We carry a full stock of Kart Republic and Tony Kart chassis, as well as Iami and Vortex Rock engines. We've also got a host of other parts available and in stock, such as products from Rev Performance Materials, Jecco Racing Seats, and more. We have a 100% satisfaction guarantee, and on top of that, if your order exceeds $200, shipping is on us. Check out all we have to offer today by visiting us online at kartstore-usa.com. Don't settle for a national engine builder. Take care of yourself with an international one. SRP Engines is a global industry leader in engine services, specializing in engine formulas such as KZ, OK, OKJ, and Mini 60. SRP Engines is the engine of choice for Magic Kart USA and helped power North America's #1 ranked pro shifter driver AJ Myers to the 2021 SuperKarts USA Pro Tour National Championship. SRP Engines can also service any spec engine class of your choice, including Iami and Rock divisions. However, if you're looking for the absolute choice when it comes to KZ shifter engines, there is nobody better. For more information, contact Amr Sanada at srp-engines.com. KC Happy Hour is proudly presented by the Rock Sonoma Karting Championship, presented by Cameron Race Promotions, the most competitive Northern California karting series. Featuring a 2-day format with practice on Saturday and racing on Sunday, multiple track configurations, and a massive prize structure including tickets to Rock Vegas, race car test opportunities, and race rewards. Rock Sonoma is the training ground of multiple national karting champions each year and race car champions as well. Featuring a full Rock Cup USA class structure with each race weekend streamed live via YouTube, it's a series you cannot miss. For more info, check us out online at zanzarukarting.com. All right, welcome back, everybody, here to KC Happy Hour. I believe we've got Carlos Iaconelli in the studio here, so we'll bring him in here in just a second. I think his camera just kicked off here for a moment, but in the meantime, I'm excited to get to talk to Carlos because obviously we've had a lot of movement on the SKUSA Pro Tour. The deal kind of fell apart at NOLA. We go to Orlando now for a longer stint, for really 4 weeks straight for some teams with a gap week. 2 weeks on, 1 week to Houston for us with Texas Sprint Racing Series, and then back to the SKUSA Pro Tour. We saw the K1 circuit deal get moved away, but luckily we got a man on the inside now that we know really well, Mike Smith. Matt, I'm sure you can echo me here. I don't think they could have picked anybody better for the job. That guy did an awesome job. I felt like at Cal Speed. I think he's well respected around the country for what he does, and now he's going to be the one leading the ship over in Winchester.
Yeah, no, I think that's great for Mike. To be honest, I'm glad to see him stay and not end up over in Vegas, which was, I think, initially his plan.
Yeah.
So it'll be good to have him still around. Mike and I have become pretty good friends over the last, 10 years or whatever it's been since I've been back in California. And he definitely did a great job for us at the kart track out there at Fontana. Mike's just a good dude, and really part of what makes that happen and part of what makes him what he is the passion that he has for the sport. I mean, he loves it as much as anybody, and it's always cool to see. So I'm happy for him. Like I said, I'm glad he's going to stay in SoCal. I'm glad he'll be part of that thing, and hopefully we get out there soon enough.
Yeah, hopefully so. At least we already got out there here to one new GM. Well, if you can call yourself that, GM of about 5 different operations. Carlos Iaconelli. Carlos, Jaco, thank you for joining us tonight, buddy. Happy to have you.
Hey, hello, Zander. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be at a car chaser.
Yeah, so let's talk about it. I want to go ahead and start. And can you walk me through a little bit of what the last 6 months, year? I mean, what the process. I know when we talked at the Rotax event at your track at Piquet Race Park about how it's been like 3 weeks with no sleep and stressed, and even through the weekend was all kinds of adjustments made, and then lots of work coming after the weekend. So up to that point to get this track race ready on the time frame to hit all the races. I mean, that has to have been just absolutely crazy. Can you describe that a bit?
Yes, I guess nobody wanted to be on my shoes at that time, but finally everything is being, it's working, and I'm very happy. We finally have a racetrack in Palm Beach. 3 years ago, this was just a dream. We worked so hard, and I put good people on the right places to finally, have the track ready. I have William Pitts working with me full time, and I'm taking care of the racetrack, the race team. It's been a challenge the past year, let's say. Before was just permits and all the legal stuff, but the past year is being really rough. The past 3 to 4 weeks, I don't even know, and I'm being I've been work nonstop. So, but I'm very happy. I can't complain about anything. It's just a dream coming true.
Yeah, I mean, again, like you said, you guys are bringing racing back to West Palm, and what was the feelings like, the emotions of going through the first race weekend of hosting a race series at your racetrack? I mean, you guys start off with not a million entries, but 100 off the back with the Rotax event. That was going to be, if you look at last year, 50 entries, that's going to be easy. 100 entries, that's bigger than a lot of club races to start. That was your guys really opening doors week there. So, I know Eric Jones from Homestead, Miami was there. Even Tom Kutcher from SKUSA dropped by. Robbie from Rock dropped by. You had about all the stars and major influences when it comes to series coming and taking a look at you on your first week and opening the doors. What was that like?
Yeah, that was very very intense. Let's say, my on the first start on the track, and my heart was on my mouth. I was even more nervous than when I used to race myself. Just so many things going on. And seeing the people there I was very nervous and emotional at the same time. And then after the last start, that we didn't have any crashes or anything, and any of the starts was just amazing. And we got a bunch of positive feedbacks. Everybody loved the track. It looks good, it drives good, it's a bunch of overtaking. So I think it was just crazy to have like a Rotax as our first week of operation. But at the end, I was very happy with the results. We had a bit of difficult start, little things here and there, but Sunday night I was very happy. I was a happy person. Sunday night, I cannot complain.
And you guys have still been busy, obviously, the last few weeks.
Yes.
I know we talked Sunday night, about how, you guys, there were still a few sections of the racetrack you weren't super happy with the paving. Did that get all, situated with how are you feeling going into the Rock weekend?
Well, they decide to use a layout that a completely different layout from what Rotax did. So basically, we have 20 different layouts, 10 to each direction. So Rock chose a layout that would be a little bit easier for the shifter guys. We have 20 turns on the full track, which is very physically difficult to everybody. And they decide to take a layout with a little bit less turns. We have 14 total turns. I think I had 14 total turns. And yeah, I think it's going to be easier. We worked on the track. We make some curbs a little bit smoother, to make it easier to drive. And on this direction, the bumps are not really problem for me. I don't see any problem on that. I had people driving last week. Many professional drivers came to drive, to test, to help me out, to choose, to see where to change here and there, and nobody brought any concern about the surface or anything. So I was very happy about that. On Rotax we were a bit. I cannot say. Probably was not our best layout, but it was the best for overtaking. We had overtaking pretty much every turn of the track, which was amazing. But some of the drivers suffer a little bit with a few bumps here and there. The curbs were a little bit too high, and some sections of the track you really had to use the curbs. So it was a bit rough for the drivers, So we worked on the curbs, so it's gonna be way easier. We changed direction. We put a little bit less turns, and I'm very confident we're gonna have a great event.
And lastly on my end, before I pass it off to these guys to see what else they have to grill you on, but from the things you learned, I mean, this is it has to be just a thrown in the fire, a bit of experience for you while still managing the race team and everything that you're doing full time. Are there a lot of lessons you come out of this learning that you could pass on to guys looking to build a racetrack? Maybe tell them to do some other kind of work. Maybe say, hey, here's what I learned, but this is crazy. I mean, what are some of the biggest takeaways you've had in this process so far?
Well, if I have one advice, is just don't do it. No, we had crazy challenges with the city permits. I think that was the biggest challenge. Then we went to the building of the track itself. I got William Pitts to work with on the design of the track. We really wanted a challenging track. I've been racing all my life. I have some expertise. I made up to Formula 2 in Europe. I race go-karts more than 15 years. I raced in Europe, world championships here and there. I did a lot. And I really felt we needed a track that is difficult. The kids learning, they need to drive in a difficult track, and then they go somewhere else and everything else is easy, So that was our main target, let's say, building the track. And I think we really succeed on it. Most of the kids love it. Some of the kids say it's way too hard. Some of the, let's say, gentleman drivers say, oh man, I got so tired. But that's normal. You're in go-kart, we're not, driving a Porsche around the street. So I'm happy. But it was a great challenge. We had a few issues also on the surface. The soil in Florida, it's not as stable as many other places. So that was our problem at the beginning. The soil is still moving. So we have to use the track, drive a lot. And at some point in this year, we're going to just resurface everything and everything is going to be 100% perfect. But I have not many complaints so far about that. Some of the people say it's a bit bumpy, but again, it's a go-kart track and we're not driving a Mercedes around the city.
It's a pretty good way to put it. Aaron, do you have questions here for Iaco as well?
Well, I do like his point, before I get into any questions, about it's a go-kart track. I grew up racing pretty rough tracks up in Wisconsin with the weather changes. It always made the tracks kind of pop up and buckle in places. So the track did look more so than I'd ever driven, but bumpy track is a bumpy track. You just got to deal with it. But how much did you guys put into getting the design of this track down the way that you wanted? Did you go through a few iterations of laying out the track before you guys decided to throw one down on the ground, or did you kind of have a good idea from the start?
Our first idea was to hire a company from Europe called Tilk. They did all the past Formula 1 tracks all around the world. But then we didn't, we decided to do ourselves because they all need CIK approval, this and that. So we didn't need that in the US. We didn't want that in the US because we want a nice track challenge. We didn't have much space. So it was very difficult to do it. But, our William just took a piece of paper and he designed something. And then I changed here and changed there. And then you put it on the ground. We, was really like a very, how to say, like, manual work, was me and him putting a piece of wood on the track, measuring the other side. And then we did probably thousands and thousands of, sticks on the floor. And then he would drive a golf cart. And then say, oh, maybe this turn, you got to close a little bit, you got to open a little bit. It was really a manual work. William's doing karting for more than 40 something years. I'm karting for about 28 years. So it was really our really feeling, coming from the heart. And I really wanted a difficult track. I think the kids from Florida, they lack a little bit of knowing how to brake, knowing like a long turn. They have a bunch of 90 degrees turn, not strong braking here and there, So I travel with my team to all the tracks and really struggle with the new kids, and I think now it's going to be way easier when you go to other tracks once you start practicing in the Piquet Race Park, which is amazing. I really into teaching the kids and coaching. That's what I like to do, and the track is going to make my work easier.
And Matt as well. Do you any notes as well, or comments or questions for Jaco?
No, I just admire the passion, and like you said, all the manual stuff that you had to do to sort of really get it laid out and figure it out on your own. I also really appreciate the idea of it being its own unique racetrack where it's got a variation of a bunch of different corners, a lot of layouts. And you're right, when you coach somebody new or you're taking somebody to a new track, I always like to reference certain corners like other ones we've seen or been to at different racetracks. Well, when you have a racetrack that's got a ton of different um, radiuses and things like that, you can there's a potential in the future where if I'm working with a driver, I might be like, hey, over here at turn 5 or 7 or whatever it is at PK's place, drive this corner like that.
Yeah.
So that I grew up same thing. I mean, I've been in karting since I was 11. I'm 43 now, so it's been a long time. And I grew up on cookie cutter tracks that were bumpy and very narrow. And I think that when you have like you said, there's no question, it's a no brainer. When you have a physically demanding track that you're used to, with a lot of different layouts, and not to mention just a variation of corners, it's going to strengthen your game when you go to some of these other places that aren't so difficult. And I mean, as far as anybody complaining about bumpy, it can't possibly be anywhere near as bumpy as where we were just at for the rock race at St. Pete. So I'm sure it's smooth as glass.
Yeah, compared to that, everything's nice and easy for
And
sure. I mean, that was about as rough as we could see it. I mean, when you could see it from live standing on the side with a camera and just a whop it all the way through. I mean, and to your credit, Carlos, that how the even the little bit of reshaping you guys did in turn 1. I mean, that is night and day from where it
Yes.
was all the
No,
way at the beginning. It was huge.
Definitely. We worked on the spots we thought could be, not really dangerous, but could be a problem, So we just was the fast turn, so we redid the surface. But we know, maybe in 4, 5, 6 months, we're just gonna repave everything. For us, it's we want to do things well. I think we have an amazing track already. I'm not really concerned about anything right now. We worked on the problems we had, we saw in Rotax that could maybe be dangerous. So we work on all the things, night and day. And I think for Rock, we're going to be already, 80% better. And, at the end of the year, we're going to be 100% ready track. Just there is no end on stuff doing on the track. We always see things we can improve, and here and there, and a barrier and a parking lot. And, there is so many things going on. And you get so many different feedbacks. Some people come to us and say, oh man, this is the best place I've ever been. And some people say, oh, I don't want to come back here. And I think that's normal. I think Homestead has this issue, Orlando has this issue. So it's just the way our business works. And we try to please everybody, but we're never going to please everybody. We do our best with most passion we have about it, and we go.
So, with that said, knowing that Rock Weekend is hopefully going to be 80% of the way to where you'd like it to be, do you have a planned, day of rest or day to sleep when you get through with the Rock stuff? I mean, I can't imagine you got a lot of sleepy days right now getting ready for it next week, but is there some time you're going to let off the gas at some point, Carlos?
No, not in the near future. So many things going on, and but I'm tired, but I'm so excited that I don't really want to stop. I stay home for a few hours when I get home, and I just thinking about what I can do, where I can improve the team, the track, the shop, and it's exciting moment for us. I'm very, very excited. I've never been like this in my life, and when 3 years ago, I would tell people we're building a racetrack, they would laugh at my face and say, "Oh, that's impossible," or this and that. So here we are, So I am very excited and happy.
Well,
Congratulations, Carlos.
that's
Thank you,
awesome,
thank you.
Carlos, man. We're stoked for you. We're stoked to come back. You treated us great when we went there, just last month. So we're really appreciative of how easy that was for us, and we're excited to go back and see you at your track next week for sure. And are you gonna stop in a little bit this week to see your driver Jacob and the team continue at Homestead as well?
For sure, for sure. On the weekend, I'll be in Homestead, and was a pleasure to have you guys there. As I told you, Zander, you guys are just great. You're great to the sport. You're a great person, and you do very well what you do. It's amazing to see you commentating the race. It's so excited, and it's just a pleasure for me to have you guys on our track and to be here tonight.
Well, I need to adjust my headset after that to fit my already big enough head. So I appreciate it, though, Carlos. Thanks so much for the time, man. I know you're so busy and everything, but we're excited to get back. And PK Race Park officially open, hosting races. You got another track in Florida. It's awesome, buddy. Thank you.
Thank you, Xander. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Aaron. I hope to see you guys next week.
Congratulations again, buddy.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks,
Thank
man.
you.
I'll see you at the Rock Race.
Sure.
There we go.
I will be there. I will be there, guys.
Oh, man. What an awesome guy.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm happy for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He seems like he's in a good place and he's happy with what he's doing, and I just hope it turns out great. Sounds like he's got good plans and good intentions, and he's pretty open,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and he's in it to be in racing. He's here because he loves motorsport and karting. And there's people that we can have debates about whether they're in the sport for the same reason or not. But you can tell that this guy really just likes and has a passion for this.
Yeah, no, it's way cool for sure.
Yeah, I think the sport is demanding on it takes every bit of your life and every bit of your hour at some point when you're working on it. So to have him go through that process already and be there 7 days a week and all in and still running the race team on top of that and be smiling is awesome, because I think everybody enters a passion sport like this pretty stoked and into it, and it can eat you up and chew you out. So it takes a special kind of person to be able to deal with it and still put a smile on their face each day, and he's one of those. Yeah, it's been cool to get to know him for the last few years, and I'm excited to get to go there. We get treated like awesome. Everyone, I think, will be as well. So that'll be a cool event. And again, like I mentioned to him, not many know, but for those that were at the Rotax race, just about every series was eyeing it up. So, it's far from the last event that'll be at Piquet Race Park, just the beginning of a very, very cool opportunity coming down to South Florida to add some more racing down there. So we'll get some more into racing here in this next segment. TJ Koyen is in the green room. He's going to join us for our final segment here tonight. It's time to go through our picks for the SKUSA Winter Series, rounds 3 and 4, championship finale coming this week to prep you guys for the KC Fantasy League. Last month we gave away 5 $50 gift cards. We had a 5-way tie for the win. I feel like there's a chance that might happen again. So if you want to take more of our money, get some more of our T-shirts, get some more stuff going on, we're going to have that and a preview for it coming right after this. So stick with us, guys. We'll be right back. Ready to go racing along the Gulf Coast? Karting the Coast is a family-oriented regional series that covers Mississippi and Louisiana. Its 2023 schedule consists of 10 races spread amongst Finish Line Performance Karting in Biloxi, Mississippi, and NOLA Motorsports Park in New Orleans. To find out more, visit coastalkarting.com. From 4-stroke to 100cc to 125cc and beyond, Technokart USA has a winning option for you. Based out of Des Plaines, Illinois, Technokart USA offers both chassis designed to win in all divisions in North American karting and a top-level race support program at the U.S. Pro Kart Series, Route 66 Sprint Series, select Cup Karts North America races, and both the Rock Vegas and SKUSA Super Nationals. Podiums, wins, and championships are waiting for you whenever you're ready to get on a Technokart. For more information, follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/TechnokartUSA. All right, it's that time of the night where we bring in TJ. We've completed our panel. We'll let Aaron get back from his water break. And fellas, we got to go through it. We got to get ready. We've got another week of a pretty stacked grid. A couple notables here coming into the SKUSA Winter Series for this week. We got our full entry list on our doc. We'll have that posted for the Fantasy League guys as well. Austin Garrison, I was texting him right before the show. Surprisingly enough, not on the entry list here for this week. He had a really, really impressive rounds 1 and 2. Wanted to be on it, won't be. We know we won't have Thomas Stolsermanis. The European season's picked up, which I think is where we've lost a handful of entries compared to around the opening weekend to this weekend. We're just shy of 200 pre-entries, so we'll probably end up around 210, maybe 220 optimistically. We were 250 at round 1. I'm sure there's a bit of fatigue going on with the number of races. USPKS in Orlando is still only a month away. So, and then the Pro Tour 2 weeks after, the Rock Winter Tour stuff, the Rotax stuff, which didn't have as many, I would say, out-of-state Americans is a good way to put it. We had Floridians running, and we had a lot of international Rotax guys come. But a lot of racing, short amount of time. Challenge the Americas on the West Coast as well. But we've got a lot of big hitters, though. But just no Stolsermanis off the list, no Garrison. I think that's still only the 2 that we've really lost from the first round. And Marian Kremers is not set for either Division X30 or Shifter, so we're going to pull him into the booth because I know he's going to be here and help us announce a little bit of it. But TJ, since we got you joining the show last, I'm putting you on the spot here first, man. So what do you got for your 5 for this week? If you can give us some storylines and previews for the fans at home.
All right, so I looked over the list a little bit. I think obviously you've got to pick Turney again. He was impressive the first weekend, and I think he's a shoe-in again to be at the front. Obviously, you're going to pick Norberg. Even when he gets shuffled backwards, he's able to fight forward. I think that's one of Ryan's strengths all the time is that he's got enough experience now that, he's got a target on his back, obviously. So he gets shuffled, but he's smart enough. He can come back forward. Yes, he got the bumper penalty, but, if he keeps his nose clean a little bit, he's still a threat. And then Ramos was looking really strong until the contact with Bonilla in that race. So I think Ramos could be a threat. What is that? That's 3.
Yeah.
And I might take Blake Nash too because he's coming off a good weekend. And like we talked last time I was on here with you, Matt, he's building momentum. He's got the skill set. He's just got to put it all together. I think, one of these weekends he's going to put it all together and he's going to be one of the guys to beat. I think that would be a good shout. And then Ingrata. I think Ingrata is really good. And he shows good maturity, I think, out of all of these guys coming up. So I think he could be a good threat too. He's obviously fast all the time. And he just seems like he gets his head down and he does the job. So I think he'd be my last pick. I think that's my last pick. I don't know. I picked 4 last time. I realized I didn't make 5 picks last episode. So I think that is 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 5. Yeah, that's 5.
All right, that's solid. Aaron, let's go to you here really quick on your picks here. Who you got for the week?
I'm pretty similar to TJ actually. I like Joe Turney. I think he's going to be strong again naturally. I'll even give Ryan Norberg a pick because he didn't win at all at SKUSA, so I'll actually choose him for the first time in like a year for one of my choices out there. I like DeTulio. DeTulio is always fast at Winter Series, and he was right up in the fight the whole time. And I think Morgado is going to bring out a good win as well, having just come off the Rock Cup win out in St. Pete. And he was up there already, obviously, at the first round. So I think he's got a little bit more momentum now. He's got a couple weekends onto the kart brand with the new Burrell Art program. And I think he'll probably come out and have a strong weekend. And I like Brandon Carr. I know there's not a ton of rookies we can go with. So it's really like Brandon Carr and Aiden Ingrata are the 2, I think, the ones that stand out to me the most. but he's usually been pretty quick. And I liked what I saw from him in the first weekend, even if he didn't necessarily make a bunch of major statements out there, like doing anything super crazy.
Okay, a solid roster for you there, Matt. Did you get a look at the entry list? I was a little late getting it onto our notes here, but do you have an idea who your 5 should be?
Yeah, obviously Norberg and Turney are the easy picks, right? Ramos has showed some pace, and he always seems to find his way up there, so he's a good pick. That's already 3. I have to pick Westover and Nash because I do believe, same thing, obviously, like we talked about, TJ, if Nash can put it together, which I think he's getting closer to doing every weekend, that's going to be a big deal for him, and he'll get it done. People know he's there. He's in the conversation. So, and then obviously, like you mentioned, the OKN thing, while it wasn't the hugest field or nothing like that, momentum never hurts. So I'm looking forward to watching him run. I'm actually going to show up on Friday night and get to hang out and spectate with no real duties this weekend. So I'm looking forward to that. But Westover and Nash, I like Ramos, I like Turney, and I like Norberg, but I'm surprised that nobody actually is going to give Bonilla a shot when, granted, it was a little bit of fortune, but, he was in the right place at the right time and got it done last month. So I wouldn't be surprised to throw him in as a wild card, really, and I don't even know how you can call him that when he's already got 1 win under his belt. So.
Yeah, that's always funny, right? Like normally we're used to seeing guys kind of lose, maybe a few big ones when the speed's there to win. I think Blake you could put in that category right now where you had the bumper get hooked behind the tire with Ryan running in the main event on Saturday at the Winter Series round 1, and then pace was good, kind of got shuffled back at Rock St. Pete, pulled it there. It was the second time he's put it on the pull. So Bonilla really the only weekend he's had that he kind of put his name out there and then didn't, get the hardware to show for it was, I think it was USPKS Newcastle last year, but it might have been SKUSA Newcastle, one of the two. He was quick. I think either he was quick like through practices like 2, 3, and 4. And then in happy hour, he got nipped by a toe, but he was like top the boards in 3 sessions in a row. And I didn't have any suit picks up. We didn't have a lot of picks to the kid. So I went over to him and he was like, man, like I'm finally fastest and Kart Chaser's not posted me. We only post happy hour today. And I was like, yeah, like I owe you one because I didn't have you pegged this week. We didn't have you at our shot list of guys that we needed to make sure we got shots of. So that was, to me, the first weekend he was really good. And then, yeah, like even in where he wins, Saturday he was kind of, I wouldn't say nowhere, but he wasn't anywhere in the top 5. He was around, 10th or so. So back with Contagia, who was running with him under RPG. So yeah, I'd still underrated where you kind of fair or unfair almost have to prove to the field that the win wasn't a fluke in a way because it was a night and day better day than where he was on Saturday. And in his case and in a lot of guys' cases, some guys tested on Friday and Saturday leading into the club race. I looked at the club race. Not a lot of guys raced the club race, but a lot of the teams were here testing the week this past weekend, like how PSL was and Speed were the first weekend. RPG didn't do the first test weekend. They were here testing this last week. But before I give mine, TJ and Matt and Aaron a little bit, we'll kind of go around the horn. How much do you think in this time of year is like, whether it's momentum or being in race scenarios more, crucial to give you confidence or make you feel like more comfortable in, right? Because if you look at, Rock St. Pete, Nash and Ingrata, and Westover and Morgado and Ramos are all running, but Norberg's not running, Turney's not running. Guys maybe test and kind of get warmed back up, but have half as many races under their belt in the same time frame. So Matt, to you first, does that make a difference at all? In your eyes of having another race weekend kind of back to back in between these that helps, maybe Blake or Louie or in the case of the PSL guys, I mean, they were first and third across the line at St. Pete coming right off a really good Sunday main. So they also had a lot of action. And then they got 2 good guys, in the seat running their go-kart the last 2 weekends.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much to be said for momentum. Definitely being in the seat from one weekend to the next obviously will never hurt. And I mean, to be fair, you can't obviously take anything away from the champ, but you got to wonder with the little bit of racing that he hasn't done compared to some of the years past, meaning Norberg. I wonder how much that's either potentially hindering his performance a little bit. Like I even said to him, to be honest, and in my opinion, maybe not so much the second day, but for sure the first day on the deal with Nash, he kind of saw that he was getting past and he gassed it up in the middle of the corner. And then that's what made him run into the back of Garrison and cause that whole thing. And to me, it was almost like, I don't want to say a sense of panic, but it was kind of unlike Ryan to make that kind of mistake. You know what I mean? Where, again, going back to like Bonilla, there's so much to be said. And I don't think enough people talk about, momentum and the whole mental game, right? Once you kind of get that monkey off your back and you sort of relieve a little bit of pressure, you realize it's not as hard as it seems. And you learn as you get more of them in terms of victories that they come and go in so many different ways. I mean, sometimes you're the beneficiary and sometimes it's reversed. But I think, like I said, when you are racing more often and as you get some more races under your belt, especially once the year gets rolling, for sure you learn from some of your mistakes. Obviously, whatever you did right, you've learned from that, and you can sort of put that in your playbook and apply it to the next weekends.
TJ, what about you? The difference of seat time, especially, testing to a race weekend, how big of a difference is that, of benefit? Because we had guys testing, but not nearly as many guys racing.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the main things that I think about and like that I coach on too is that you should always kind of know who you're racing against, and having more information on your competitors and how they race and what to expect from them on the track. I think that's super helpful. So while some of these guys are testing, yeah, they're getting the seat time to knock the rust off and stay sharp with their own driving. Maybe they're not building up the same mental database of like, this guy's going to race me this way. This guy's going to race, things are changing constantly in how the racing all works out. So it's good to be actually in a racing situation every weekend if you can this time of year, because you're, like I said, you're building a mental, book on how these guys are driving you. And it's a little bit easier to keep track of, I think, what's going on the track when you're out there, when you've got actual racing seat time as opposed to testing.
Yeah, I think it's definitely got to, count for something. I mean, Aaron, obviously your picks, you have Turney, you have Norberg, but with the rest of them, what do you think?
Yeah, I always liked pretty much along the same lines as TJ. You can practice as well as you want to. You can do as much seat time as you want, and you can get as good at turning a hot lap as you can. But none of that really matters until there's something on the line and you're racing for a checkered flag. If you don't put yourself in a situation where you're going against somebody for a checkered flag, you're not really, you can have the pace and you can just not you outrace yourself during the actual laps that count. So I think getting time in a practice race weekend, even if it's just like a scrimmage almost, where you just go out there and it's not the full event, but you're running for something there, it helps out a lot. And if you can't build up momentum in an actual race, it's a good way to kind of get started going in that way and get a gauge of where you're at relative to everybody else for the upcoming weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has to be taken into account. Momentum's got to be big for Bonilla, so I'll go a little bit, off the radar with mine. I think, along with Ramos getting, booted, we forget that DeTulio was leading for a good bit of the Sunday main. So I have ADT on one of my lists. I'm going to stay away from Turney and Norberg, the obvious ones, because of how quick they were through the whole weekend, and highlight a few more guys. I'll put Bonilla on my list too. I mean, this is still, again, fresh for him, but, he should be good going this direction. I think DeTulio would be really good this direction because out of everybody, even if you count the test weekend, he's got by far the most laps going this way or anyway out of all the major guys. He's a local at the same time being a national level contender. So he's got to be a number one pick. He's, I'd put Bonilla there. I think Blake's a fair pick. I think Louis Westover deserves a pick because I think he's due. And I think another guy that's absolutely due that we didn't see a lot from in the first round was Thomas Nevu, because I think that never. Either way, I've done it like every single way.
I'm pretty sure it's
never. I never do it right. No, I think it's
there's
never. Like you do it like the French. It's like the French accent on it, like never.
Neveu.
Yeah, something
Yeah,
like
you
that.
bring in the
We'll take your
like, you bring in
support.
the U,
He
like, kind
pitted
of
with us a
TBV.
few. Yeah, he pitted with us a few times, so we got it straight. And the way I understand it, it's Never.
Well, whatever it is, never
Whatever.
Thomas.
Poor
Thomas.
Thomas.
I think Thomas and Louis are absolutely due. Louis, no doubt, is due. I mean, he has had, what's it? The cartoon anvil is what some of the IndyCar guy, Marshall Pruitt, I think, likes to joke about. That he's had just stuck with him of like bad luck in every possible way. But the pace has been good when he's finally been able to get like some clean sessions together. So I think he's due. I think Blake, this could, I mean, you talk about momentum, right? He's the only guy coming into this weekend with a race less than 7 days ago where he won at. And it was it was Sunday, right? Where he won. Jesus won Saturday, fixed the motor out. So Sunday for Blake, I mean, the last time you're on the racetrack, you win, you show up, you've got the most momentum out of anybody. So Blake,
Sure.
Louis due. It's a Nash heavy lineup. I think Thomas is gotta, is going to turn it up a little bit this week. And then, I got ADT and I'll give, the nod to Donovan because I think that he can pull it. And if I have to go on the rookies there, I mean, I had Brandon Carr, I think, doing pretty good. And, that first weekend just was a struggle for them, but he should be there. But you go momentum, right? Ingrata's got it for sure. And we didn't see as much of him in the first round. But his weakness has never really been so much, I think, raw speed. I think the kid just racecraft wise has been a bit more of a struggle, and it was even a bit of a struggle at St. Pete. So he's kind of a firecracker pick if you think he can get through cleanly. Usually it's not even like it I like to call it like kind of bloody in your own nose. Like he's not like a weapon out there all the time, and but he's putting yourself in a spot where you're more vulnerable to get wrecked heightens your odds to get wrecked, and you'll get wrecked more times than not. Like when I would coach guys or when I would tell myself is if I give someone the chance to wreck me, there's a good chance that they'll take me up on it. So you can't do that, and that goes to anything from, hanging around on the outside on a pass on lap 2 to, blocking early in the race to, just going into a zone that's like you can see chaos brewing, but there's a gap. You go for the gap and it's early, and sure enough, chaos brews and you get collected. Whereas if you're more patient or if you're more like precise of where you put yourself, that, all right, if I go here through the corner, through the start, like nobody's going to hook me in the rear, and turn me around. And I think that's where he struggles a lot of the time. And a few other young kids too, because like everyone that we brought on here talk about like the junior to senior transition or even the KA senior to X30 senior transition as you go from racing a handful of guys to having like so many, 10 to 20 sometimes that can run the same lap time once the tires are in. So like, racing just a lot more people. And quickly they'll shuffle you back because they know that you could have the same pace they will versus, less of an urgency to get by in the early laps or urgency to get by in general because, your pace will come back up. Like TJ says, Ryan's the only one I think that successfully had enough pace in a lot of races last year where he could get bullied to the back and he'd be like, that's all right. Like I'll come back through. Most other guys I don't think really could do that too well last year because they're just everyone's a lot more level. And that first weekend seemed pretty level, Turney, I don't think anyone really had a nod up on pace, at least, package wise. So we'll see, but those are mine.
I should have mentioned, and I'm kind of surprised that nobody else did, Jacob Kolar, because he was floating around the top 5 like all weekend at the Winter Series, and I should have mentioned him instead of I don't know who I would have replaced him with, but he was really impressive actually for I think like his 4th or 5th senior race. He only started running senior at the Miami Grands last year, if I remember right. So for him to come out there and do that one, like, he was really good. Yeah,
that's right.
That should have been a rookie pick actually, because I like his performance a lot in the first weekend.
I think he probably had the most points because Carr didn't have that good of a weekend, and Ingrata was up and down. But I think Jacob probably had a better one outside of the one.
I don't know if we had him
one.
listed as a rookie because I think I was trying to look for it, and I don't know if we had him as a rookie in there.
Then I screwed up then, but that's nothing new. That's typical. So, but either way, this layout, what is so tricky about this going this direction is the flat curb in turns 1 and 2. So that's already tricky enough going the normal way, where you're having to rotate while you're driving over a really 15-foot wide curb. where there's divots in the ground. So you kind of have to turn the steering wheel early going into turn number 2, go in the normal direction, going the opposite way. Now you're building onto a straightaway that's, darn near full throttle turn 1. I mean, when we didn't have the new curb set up and the grass, you would mat it. And then now you have to breathe the throttle a little bit and maybe brush the brake to go through the first corner. But realistically, like the last 2 turns are what set that run all the way to turn number 2, which is 2 full lengths of the racetrack. So a much more crucial corner. And that's why I think the Tullio will be really good, because when you're going over those divots, you have to turn the wheel earlier. And it almost feels like a delay. And it's in my limited amount of laps I've done with the new setup, which I did a few test sessions last year, it was so difficult to be quick enough over that you were quicker than staying narrow and just staying on the asphalt. But when you hit it right, it is a lot faster. And as the rubber gets laid down, it'll get a little bit easier, but it's not like rough like bumps, because all the curbs are level. It's just divots all the way down. So you're literally kind of jumping as you go and try to turn the wheel and get a whole shot onto the straightaway, and you're going as wide as you can to line up, going out to the plastic barrier, because it's just curb and then barrier. So you go out all the way to the edge, hopefully don't hit the marbles and touch it on your way out, and then try to get the launch onto the straightaway. So you're not even like, at least going into turn number 2, the normal direction, you might brake a little bit and you're off power, so you're not loading the axle. But here you're trying to probably get on the power as soon as you can to launch down the straightaway. So if you're easing onto the gas as you're finishing that turn into the apex, is one of the most difficult sections I think we have on the North American circuit right now. So I think that's going to play a key role in guys figuring out the racetrack, especially from the haves and the have-nots to like the top 10 to the back 20. You'll see guys really struggle in the last 2 turns, I think, more this week than what we did going the other direction, those being turns 1 and 2, because you're faster at the harder part, which is turning while you're over the curbs.
Yeah,
you just
100%.
gave everybody the secret, Xander, so now you just completely negated DeTulio's advantage that he had.
Maybe.
Yeah,
I mean,
all
kind
of
of
the
old news
competitors are
though.
watching Kart Chaser Happy Hour right now.
I mean, all right, but like, easier said than done. Everyone's here done driver coaching at 1.2 ourselves and to other people. And how many times do we tell them just go and do that? And then, I'm not saying I could do it. I'm saying this right now of how I think you need to get through it and how I could get through it. And I mean, I'll go get my freaking butt handed to me if I go try and do it. I'm just saying it's hard. It's very, very difficult, I feel like, to get through that.
It's definitely the corner that makes a difference for sure. I mean, going all the way back to 19 before the little changes that they made, that was still crucial going that direction. And it was funny because the only one that I saw that weekend that was doing it right was Austin Garrison, and everybody else was keeping her narrow. And I'm like, man, that sure looks a whole lot faster. And I'll never forget, I filmed it with my phone, and Brooks was like a 10th off or something. And he's like, oh, we need to change this and we need to do that. I'm like, no. You better change your driving is what you better do. No way. So long story short, I show him the video, and I'm like, dude, you got to let the thing float out a little bit more and go straighter over the curb onto the straight. And then lo and behold, we set the pace, and we actually ended up winning on Sunday with a pushback. But that's one thing, like, for sure, that is no question the most 2 important corners on the track are what you mentioned. So
yeah,
I think for a long time nobody was floating her all the way out to the barriers there, but then once guys started figuring it out, I don't think it's much of a secret anymore. But you still, like you said, you still got to do it, and there's an art to it for sure, because if you don't get the right angle over the curb, and like you said, the execution side of it, yeah, I can tell you how to do it all day long, but you still have to get it done.
Yeah, and it's different now from then, right? Because back then we were jumping over them like a motocross whoop section.
Right.
Now it's all flat.
Yeah.
So now it's difficult, but it's different. But yeah, I remember that weekend, and dude, I remember talking to Austin about it when he came off, and he had blood stains on like right where his butt was on the inside of the suit, because he was so committed to that line the whole weekend. As he'd land, he was literally like bruising his tailbone. So like his whole lower back was all messed up and bleeding into the suit as he's like ripping that CRG to, like, I think he was either quickest or top 3 in final practice and podiumed one of the days. But yeah, thank God they changed it, because you talked, whatever everyone was complaining, or whoever it was, to Iaconelli about Piquet Race Park being a little bumpy. That was as physically like trying to hurt people as we could. So thank God they did what they did, because that was something else. But yeah, it's the super, super crucial section. So it just, the only way I could describe it is it's literally like having lag when you're sim racing, like just turning the wheel and waiting for the car to rotate, and then like it grabs and then you go, because your wheel is turned in your hand, but it's not turned on the screen. It's kind of what it feels like when you go over those curbs over there. So
I actually like this layout better. I think I mentioned it in the last episode that I was on, that it's like, it's one of those deals where you get through. I mean, that's high heart rate stuff where you're going through those last two corners, then you got to go all the way down the straight. It's basically full gas, like you said at the end, and you're ripping around the next two right-handers, and you come down the hill into that center little complex, and that's when you better calm the fuck down, because if you don't drive smooth and mellow through there, you're going to pay the price going back up the hill to that next 180 once you get off that last hairpin. So it's like, to me, it's a really bitchin' layout, and it's really cool as far as what I just mentioned, the difference in the two heart rates, just, and ultimately two disciplines, right? Like, you're up on the wheel most of the time, but for a bit there, I think it's like 12, 13 seconds is the split. You better chill and you better execute. So I actually like it. It's kind of one of the reasons I'm going to go show up there to watch, because I think the racing is going to be great. And it will separate the better drivers, or the haves and the have-nots, I think, compared to the last layout. No question.
I agree. Closing thoughts here, TJ, coming into the weekend. We'll kick it off with you. Anything else to leave the viewers with?
I don't have a lot of extra thoughts besides what we've talked about already, but I think the racing was really good the first round, so I'm pretty excited to see. Like Matt said, I think this layout, from what I've seen, I haven't driven here, but I've watched plenty of races here now. This layout, I like it a lot, and I think it should provide a pretty good show. And the field is, as always, we have a lot of good drivers who could win. We made our picks or whatever, but honestly, anybody, half the field could win the race. So I think it's going to be a good weekend.
Aaron?
Well, I was just looking up the weather. Thankfully, it's all looking nice and clear for us this weekend.
Boring.
Because that we almost.
He
had
says this because he's not coming here. That's why he's saying this.
Yeah, right.
Have the rain while we're all
a
there.
spectator.
This guy sucks, man. This guy stinks. All right, Aaron.
But yeah, so the weather will be good, and I haven't actually seen this track layout run in person. I was out last year for the first round when they ran the same layout as last month, but I haven't seen this layout. Matt, like you were saying, I'm interested to see, because it looks like you have a lot of high commitment, high speed, sustained cornering, and I like seeing that for that first. I think it's 3, 4, and 5, or 2, 3, and 4 corners there. So I like to see that, and I think it's going to be good racing all the way around. I don't remember if we said this layout or the other layout race is better, but I think they both race pretty well, honestly, and it'll be pretty exciting.
Yeah, Matt, on to you.
Yeah, absolutely, no question. I mean, I think both layouts provide really good racing. I think the first, last month was absolutely fun to watch. We had the surprise with the Bonilla deal, so that was cool. And I mean, like we said, it's going to be good to see if the same, more or less, 5 or 7 are in that same group, and if it's going to be the same fast 5 or 7, or will it be, will some of those guys get diluted, and we'll have some other players that maybe didn't have such a good weekend the first time, and they're going to show up. So like I said, I feel like that this is a layout where if you're a little more comfortable and familiar with it, you're going to have somewhat of an advantage versus the one before.
100%. I think, this way, we've seen some years where we've seen the same lead pack, 2 weeks in a row. We've seen some guys where, they're quick on the first weekend and then not so quick, and then guys turn it up here this week. So like TJ said, and like Aaron said, we've got another good field. That's exciting. Entry should be good across the board. The only thing that's a little bit light is shifter, which is to be expected. It's always light here at Winter Series. It's the most expensive class to run. So I think the entry should be pretty good for the Orlando stint, and we'll see where they look like for the Rock Piquet race, because I think that'll be pretty good. We'll preview that with some other stuff next week and kind of debrief it. And I had as always with the last weekend and kind of my Let Me Explain segment to finish off, that we don't do enough of a job of kind of working on promoting some of the younger classes, and I still haven't figured out exactly how I want to do that, because the more that we show, the cameras are unbiased, but they show everything, including wrecks and including rough racing, and I'm still not comfortable with pushing that, because I'd hate to see the comments look like they did for Barrichello and for Leone on our posts for a mini or a micro field. But with that said, in terms of doing good stuff for the sport, I think we could do a lot better giving more value on these weekends. So Friday night, for those watching the show that are coming to the Winter Series here this week, I want to film it as well. I'm going to say this here live, so I hold myself to it because I've been toying around with this idea for a while. But I like to do after practice. We'll set up over by the podium. And we have our plan for this deal, but it'll be a little bit of interview training. So it'll be open to everybody, fully free. Just show up. I'm going to do a little seminar that kind of goes over personalities and how to talk and present yourself a little bit and show yourself in a way that, people would want at, bigger races. This stuff happens at all kinds of minor league car races, and there's no reason that we can't do it at our go-kart races as well, because it's good for us, obviously, with the stream content. It's good public speaking skills for the kids moving forward. And it's a little bit of extra value. So Friday night after practice, for those watching, parents watching, whoever, this week, which should be around 5:30, and I'm going to try and record it so we can post it online too. But I think it'll be something cool to add a little bit. We have, again, these training sessions for media, for sponsorship, for digital media. There's a lot of different little mini seminars of 15, 20 minutes that we could do, throughout the year. So I'm hoping we can do this some more, probably with the beef barbecues in the backdrop at like USPKS events. So I'm excited about it. I'm going to do it. And if you want to practice interview with us, if you want to learn a little bit, I'm going to talk a little bit, and then we'll run through some practice interviews with everybody there. So it should be cool. And I want to do more stuff like this to kind of help both give kids some skills, kids and adults, for anyone who wants to do it and hasn't done it before. And then, kind of work on, making our sport a little better to take care of, we don't have college internships, but we can at least give some skills on each race weekend. So I think it'll be cool. So
cool.
I'll hold myself to it.
I think that's way cool.
Yeah. So
It's a good idea.
Without making my head any bit bigger by these awesome guys here and everyone that's come on, TJ, Matt, Aaron, thanks as always, boys. Appreciate the show. And for all of you tuning on, we'll see you guys next week for our Rock debrief and everything else that will come. Always tune in this week. Next week will be that hybrid KC Premium membership viewership, but SKUSA stepped up this year. Everything's free. So if you want to watch the action, kicks off at 9 a.m. with qualifying, goes through with heat races, I believe around 11 a.m. or 11:30. Main events kick off at 1:30 Eastern. We roll through all the way to 5 p.m. Eastern each day. We'll be announcing our broadcast team later on this week. We've got a lot more cool posts coming, so stick with us. And for the KC Fantasy League, haven't decided yet on prizes. That's coming here in a few moments, but I need to get the at least entries up so you guys can go ahead and enter and make your picks for X30 Pro Senior here in a little bit. So thanks as always for tuning in. We'll see you guys in 1 week's time, or if you're tuning in live, see you in a few days.